you, Dr. Harris. We recognize Mr. Trone for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry we were late. We have too many overlapping hearings. Thank you, Director Johnson, for joining us. Chairman Joyce, Ranking Member Cuellar. ICE has worked through Homeland Security investigations on the front line of the TCOs and the cartels. You're right there in the front line. Your budget request in 24 has asked for an increase in the tools to assist in stopping these networks and human smuggling, fentanyl, killing 100,000 Americans every year. These budget cuts that have been proposed to go back to FY22, how's that going to affect your ability to stop the fentanyl from these cartels that's come into the U.S. through legal ports of entry?
So I'm not tracking what cuts you're referring to. I know we certainly received some additional funding in FY24. We're asking for funding to increase.
The cut will be to go back to the 22 budget, which has been proposed. So you went up in 23, you've asked for more in 24, which is, sounds like it's needed. But going back to 22, what's that going to do to you?
Well, it certainly, I thought the cuts had to do with the number of individuals that we just weren't able to get through the hiring process in any given fiscal year. And that's the cut that was provided. So if it's something different than
Not
that,
having
then I
enough
might
employees will be a cut.
Well, right, but I certainly agree. But at least in terms of the fentanyl context, we were given 40 million, if my memory serves, to sort of increase sort of our fight against the fentanyl crisis. There was also funding to allow our Mexican vetted units, our TCIUs, to have access to Raven, which we think is going to go a long way at not only dealing with this fentanyl crisis, but also child sexual exploitation and some of the other heinous crimes.
Okay, well, we certainly need to protect the budget where it deals with fentanyl. We can't let it continue to come. How about I've heard about the administration is considering restarting the detention of families. While some that pose a public safety risk, I get it, but certainly a family can navigate their immigration case best from their home, not behind bars or in detention. So FEMA and ICE, community-based alternative to detention policies, particularly those that utilize case management and service by qualified nonprofits, have shown to be cost-effective and have a high compliance rate with immigration obligations. Can you talk about how the 24 budget will expand these community-based alternatives and the noise that we're hearing about restarting family detention? Is that true or not?
So there's certainly been some discussions about just like options for dealing with the families coming across the border. Family detention is something that we've done historically. It was raised as a potential option, and it was something that at least was not met with great, exception amongst the leaders. So at this time, there's certainly no plan to restart family detention in any way, shape, or form. The current plan is to continue to use our alternatives to detention, where we would put the parents or the adults, the heads of household, on some sort of form of ATD, and we're also looking at potentially developing a home curfew program, which would be similar to like house arrest, and piloting something like that. So that's also on the horizon, but there's been no decision to restart family detention.
Great. Talk a minute about the 24 budget. How's that going to expand community-based alternatives?
So the 24 budget, the 23 budget actually reduced our ATD program. I think our 24 budget may keep it steady at 170, if my memory serves. So I'm not sure that there's a lot of funding to significantly increase our ATD, but I think some of what you're describing is the FEMA-based grants, which I believe is funding that FEMA gets, not necessarily ICE funding.
Okay, great. And secondly, according to U.S.-Mexico joint statement, April 13th, DHS is committed to expanding its efforts to disrupt gun smuggling to Mexico through ICE's Operation Without a Trace, Desert Lightning. However, there's a GAO recommendation for ICE to identify performance measures for these. How do we plan to measure that, these efforts of preventing firearms? That's what we'd like to see is some data and some measurements on how we stop getting these firearms to the cartels with these new efforts.
No, very good question and good point. I mean, that has definitely been a priority over the last year, more outbound inspections. It's certainly something that the Mexican government has been pushing us to do more of, and we have certainly committed to do the same. So I think, over the last month and the upcoming months, you'll start to see more outbound inspections that include both ICE and CBP.
Certainly, we've asked the Mexican government to help us on fentanyl. They've not been helpful. They've asked us to help on the guns. So someone needs to take the first step. So thank you for that. I yield back.